Hello and welcome to episode 51 of the HaskinCast Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Haskin, and I will be delving into season 3 of the Netflix original show, Stranger Things. Obviously, as you heard at the beginning of the show, there are spoilers ahead because I will be talking about season 3 and doing a bit on each episode here as I watch them. I want to watch one and then do the recording so that I can keep fresh in my head and before the episodes start to blend together, which they tend to do after 3 or 4, for me anyway. Can't remember, is this on episode 1 or 3 or whatever? So I think it's important to kind of keep things in the continuity of the episode, although we'll see how well I do at that as we go on. But let's get into it. The thing that I thought was really cool is that they give you a 4.5-minute recap of what's happened on the show so far, so that if it's been a while since you've seen it or reacquainted yourself with it, you can get up to speed on the important things. And they also give you the option to skip it with a little skip button, which I think is really cool. I love that Netflix does that, especially on shows when you're binge watching. You don't want to hear the theme over and over and over again. So it's nice to just be able to push past that and get right into the episode. So thank you for doing that. Let's talk about the opening scene of the actual show. So you're in this CERN-looking building, and there's obviously this big machine, and they're about to turn it on. And the first thing you see is a guy in a military outfit. You get that he's probably the top in command. He's smoking a cigarette in this lab, which is probably not going to happen in a real lab. But they do this in film and television all the time because they want to make the guy look like a jerk. Right? They want to make you dislike him right off the bat. So they stick a cigarette in his hand, or they make him, eat something, or, whatever the trick is. But it's just basically something to show, hey, I'm a condescending prick and I'm in charge. So I'm going to do what I want. Not a fan of that myself. I just think that the fact that he's there, present in the room, and what you see him do later is enough for you to understand that he's actually in charge. And then here's where I just get lost right off the bat. Because as I've said before on the show, if the writing doesn't make sense, if what the characters' actions are don't make sense, I have a hard time following the story. And I'm pretty open-minded. You could take me on the most fantastic journey, whether it was Star Wars or Jurassic Park or Lost, or all these different, imaginary worlds that I've been through. And I'm willing to go with you on that journey, no matter how ridiculous, no matter how fantastic, no matter how insane they are. I'm willing to go with you on that journey. But to make it work, the things that people would do have to be believable, right? And I've given the example on the show about Poltergeist, the remake of the movie that came out a couple years ago, where this family who has no income, the father's just lost his job, the woman's a writer who hasn't started her first book yet, and yet they just got qualified by a mortgage company for a 3-story house. And that's not happening. Maybe at best, there was some sort of government assistance program for first-time home buyers or something like that, where they were able to take advantage of that. But still, it's not very likely. And there was no explanation, nothing that headed in that direction that would explain how they got the house. Just, oh yeah, you're approved for your loan, even though you have absolutely no income and no reason for us to believe in you whatsoever. Having a hard time with that. So right there, 20 minutes in, they lost me. And then it was really hard to believe about or care about anything else that went on the journey because the world was not believable. Yet I can watch a movie like Star Wars or Lost or Lord of the Rings and completely believe the worlds, the creatures, the storyline, the fantasy of it all, because what the characters are doing makes sense. It seems realistic when the characters are acting the way that human beings would act, or orcs, or whatever you're following around, droids. So that was the first issue that I had with this show. And if it's nitpicky, I'm sorry, but that's just the way that I see things. And so I've seen this episode one time. I'm giving my opinions based on one viewing of the episode. I may feel completely differently about some of these things as I see the shows again, but certainly not on this point at all. This is a pretty typical movie trope. And here's the part that doesn't make sense. They walk into this room, this obviously secured scientific facility. They have 2 keys that need to be used to turn on this machine. And both of the keys are in the same briefcase. Well, why would you have 2 keys? For security purposes, right? So if you're trying to make sure that this is all done securely and properly, why would you put both keys in the same briefcase? You wouldn't. Two different people would have to have access to those keys coming from two different locations, two different points of security. It just doesn't make any sense. And then they don't even turn the keys at the same time. So you could have one person turn the key, take one step over and turn the other key, and have somebody do this completely on their own. So all this extra measurement of having a secure briefcase, it's so unnecessary, because the actual act, anybody could walk in and do that. And since the keys are together in one briefcase, if you could just get into the briefcase, then you're good to go for everything else. So it just seems really, really poorly done. But that's the world they're giving you. And then they use the two keys to turn on the machine that at first is sort of reminiscent of the collider at CERN, the way that it's laid out. Certainly gave me that impression anyway. But then when it actually turns on, it's more like that huge machine in 13 Ghosts that's actually vertical, that gets the motor running and then shoots out this beam into the wall. Now, you kind of get that what they're doing is they're breaking into the wall and into whatever their version of the upside down is, or the same as the other scientific facility that we've seen, where they can go into that other world and interact with it. And so I don't know if this was intentional. I'm going to say it is, but as they're breaking into a new world, almost like a birthing coming out of our world into their new world, the thing cracks and opens up like a vagina, very obviously vagina looking. And so that's why I think it was done on purpose. And metaphorically, it makes sense. A little weird though, but okay, you go with it. And the upside down or whatever it is fights back and actually prevents the machine from opening it. And there's a bit of a scar there. You can kind of see into it a little bit. And then the officer of the military and the scientist guys come down. But let me before they come down, here's what happens. So there's these workers that are working around the machine, around this energy beam that's being blasted into the wall. Why are they there? They're wearing these gas masks. It's a dangerous area. Although when the scientists come out, they're not wearing gas masks. So I don't know why these other soldiers were. That makes no sense. And why would you put people out there right next to this beam? It's got to be hot. It just doesn't make any sense. And of course, they're basically there to die. So that's the only reason they're there. They would, in a real life situation like that, I highly doubt they would actually have people running around there next to where the beam is. Just doesn't make sense. And then they're in gas masks, and then the scientists come down and the military guy comes down and nobody's wearing a gas mask. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So those kind of things just really kind of get on my nerves. But so now all the soldiers are dead. The scientists and military guys are there looking around. He touches the hole, which of course you're going to put your hand on that right after a laser was just burning into that for 30 seconds. And then this other military guy just picks up the lead scientist up into the air, Darth Vader style, and chokes him. And why? Because it didn't work? How are they supposed to know what's going to break through that and not? I mean, there's going to be some trial and error. So the military guy lets him do it. The main military guy just lets his second in command or whoever choke the life out of the scientist, goes to the second scientist and basically goes, "It's your job now." Well, okay, so now he's working under the duress of, well, they're going to kill me if I don't get it right the next time. And how much information was lost by killing the first scientist? I mean, it was their first run through probably, and it didn't go through. But, how many times in movies does that happen versus does that ever happen in real life? Are people just killed because their experiment didn't work perfectly the first time? All the knowledge that person has, okay, well, that didn't work. And if that didn't work, then we try this or we try that. Why would you kill them off? That just makes no sense whatsoever. So for any of you who have ever been in a situation like that, I would be curious to know how realistic that end result is, because that just doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense to me. Yet they do it in movies all the time. Seems very strange to me. So then the show theme comes on, which is really cool. You love that familiar Stranger Themes thing, which is just a brilliant piece of music. I absolutely love it. That little haunting voice choral section in there just really makes it for me. Plus that 80s sounding synth and that pulse is just phenomenal. And again, they give you the option to skip it if you don't want to hear it. And then they go into the first scene of the show, which is Mike and Eleven making out at Hopper's house. And, you kind of figured this was going to happen. They kissed at the snowball at the end of season 2. They'd missed each other. They were going to spend time together. Obviously, they realize that time is precious and they're not going to take a chance on being apart any more than they have to, because that was a grueling number of months for them in the meantime. So I get that. And of course, Hopper's all upset. And of course, she's using her power to distance himself from her so that she can keep spending time with Mike, doing whatever they want to do. And that's the first bit of separation that we see, which is going to be a long-running theme in this episode. And I'm guessing the entire season. We saw some of it in season 2 with Dustin separating himself from the group to hide his creature, which was the whole problem I had with season 2, because he's the one that was the proponent of everybody being unified and honesty and let's tell each other the truth and all this stuff. And then he's the one that's been hiding. I just didn't buy it. So then we go to the mall, and which is the first time we've seen the mall. It's a new mall in town. And Steve Herring, the cool guy with the cool hair, who's just the badass that all the women want, is working at an ice cream parlor wearing a uniform. Here's the next thing I don't buy about this episode is I can't imagine he would have taken a job like that. I could see him taking a job where he can still keep his looks, where he isn't going to be in full view of people wearing a stupid uniform. Not buying that at all. They could have put him at a bookstore, would have made more sense. They could have put him at a shoe store, would have made more sense. But an ice cream parlor, I don't think a guy with his view of himself would have taken a job like that. I like his coworker, though. I don't know if she's his boss or what, but I like her. She's really doesn't say much, just very distanced, as like a lot of people are. They're just kind of loners. She talks with a very monotone. I care about this because it's funny, but I really don't like you kind of thing. And so that most likely they're setting this up for his new romance. And I think that will develop a little slowly over time. She's making fun of him. Oh, here's your next dork moment. I'll put the check on the board. Kind of like that, the little boy pulls the pigtails of the girl saying, oh, but I like you. I want to be with you because you're really cute. And I'm just going to do something mean because we weren't taught any better. But that's how life worked. And unfortunately still works. So I kind of think that there's a potential love interest brewing there. Plus, he's striking out with every girl that's coming to them for ice cream because he's wearing a stupid little hat in his uniform and trying to be super cool, overcompensating for the uniform, trying to go out of his way to be extra cool. Just doesn't work. But anyway, so he's got his job at the ice cream parlor. So here's the part I like about this, though, is that he sneaks the kids into a movie. And this shows that they've kept their bond that they developed at the end of season 2. I really like this because I think that they needed somebody who's a little older helping them out. And I like the fact that it's him because it shows that at the end of the day, he really is a good guy. He's trying to be cool. He's trying to fit in to the world and everything. But at the end of the day, he's a cool guy. He's taking care of looking after these kids. So I do like that part. Then the power outage happens at the mall. And I don't like this scene. And here's why. Because I don't know anything about power grids, okay? I really don't. I'm just to be totally honest about that. But when they go to the outside of the mall, they're panning and most of the town is dark. There's like 2 lights left on at the mall, which slowly go out. And then as they pan the camera to the left, there's like a light here that goes out and a light there that goes out. It's almost like following the pan of the camera going, hey, there's still life here that we're going to snuff out. But yet everything around it has been in total darkness for seconds. And it would seem to me that when the grid goes down, for whatever reason, within about 3 seconds, the whole thing's going to be out. I can't imagine that some of these things that, 4 or 5 seconds later, after everything around it is out, there's still lights on in those areas. And if they were, lights that were on from generators, they're not going to go out because of the power outage. So again, doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, although it did make for a cool shot. I really like the visual of it. But story-wise, again, I don't really think that things happen like that. So, gonna call foul on that. Again, you're more than welcome to dispute that. If you know something I don't know about power grids, which I know nothing about them, please feel free to correct me on that. Then I will never say it again. So the power outage happens. And of course, Will still has some kind of connection to the source of all this because he feels something happening. And it just goes to show that at the end of season 2, when they got the demon out of him and all that, there's still whatever connection was with him in the beginning that caused him to get taken is still there. So he is obviously going to be the connection, or at least one of the connections to all of this as we go forward. And it's going to be curious to see how it plays out this season, because they've already pulled that off well through 2 seasons. So I'll be curious to see what they do with him the third go around. Then we find out that Nancy and Charlie are together. So here's part of why I like that Steve is going to be the sort of mentor to the kids, because Nancy and Charlie are moving on with their lives. They're together. They're in a relationship. They have a job that they work at together that's new with the newspaper. And so now they're going to be with the kids less, even though they weren't with them that much. They were still sort of catalysts in helping them out. So now they're separated, again, a little bit of separation from the rest of the group. So at least now they have Steve to kind of be someone who steps in and looks after them. So now they have their new jobs. And of course, there's got to be an issue with them. So they're panicking about potentially being late to work. She doesn't care whether he's late. She only cares whether she's late, which I kind of like that people take pride in the way they present themselves. She doesn't want to get fired. She wants to show that she's a good worker. Obviously, women in the 80s had a lot more to do to prove themselves as being valid for some stupid reason, but they had to work harder to be taken seriously, to be appreciated and respected in the workplace. So I like that she's at least considerate of that for that time frame. I think it's stupid that stuff still goes on today. I think it's stupid it ever did, but it did, and that's the reality of it. So I kind of like that she's concerned about getting to work. So the next thing that I have an issue with is Dustin. Now I like Dustin. We all like Dustin. He's an interesting character. He's a cute kid. He's really excitable, but he's coming home from science camp, which I think is a great move, by the way. That's very natural for a kid like him to go to science camp. Although why he didn't get all the friends to go with him seems kind of weird. It seems like he would have wanted them all to be there, but that's okay, because again, part of that separation, he was separated from the group for the summer, or for part of the summer. And he gets on his radio in the car with his mom on the way home, and he's like, "Are you guys there? Click. Are you guys there? Click. Are you guys there?" Like, he's not even giving them a second to answer. And from what I remember about these kind of radios in the old days was that you can't hear somebody respond if your button is pressed in and you're talking. It's not a two-way radio that way. So he's not even giving them a chance to respond for him to hear any response from them whatsoever, because he's going, "Are you there? Click. Are you there? Click. Are you there? Click." I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. There's no way he would get a response. And he would know that. He would definitely know that, because he's had a lot of interaction with these walkie-talkies. So I did have to call foul on that. I really didn't like that at all. Plus, does he really think that everybody's sitting around on their radios just waiting for him to come home? Kind of ridiculous. I get that he's excited, but just like try. They don't respond. All right, I'll try again a little bit later. I'll try when we get home, or when we're closer to home, or whatever. Don't know how far away the camp is. So I don't know. Didn't really care for that. And then he gets home. Nobody's there to greet him. Poor Dustin. And he looks at the turtle and goes, "At least you're happy to see me." And I'm like, what happened that he knows the turtle is happy? The turtle looked at him. Of course, there's motion, there's movement. The turtle's going to look at movement, but a turtle can't signify, "Hey, I'm happy you're here." He's not going to jump up and down on you like a dog would. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of a weird thing. I could see him saying something like, "Well, I hope that you're happy I'm here at least," even though no one else seems to care. I could see him saying that, but come on, writers, just, it's got to make sense. So the robots start moving around. And when you really think about it, I can kind of see him being nervous, because after everything he's been through, he's just come home. He doesn't know what's going on. He hasn't talked to anybody. Things could be easily going on. There could be a new creature. There could be more, action happening that he's not aware of. So I totally get him freaking out, even though the most logical answer is it's probably 11 doing this to him. And they're obviously leading him somewhere, so if it was a creature, it just would have attacked him. If it's doing something that's playful, it's probably going to be 11. So, but like I said, I can go with him being like, oh my God, what's going on? Getting a weapon, that sort of thing. As ridiculous of a weapon as a can of hairspray is, even though it works. Um, so then, of course, they're all hiding and he jump scares. And of course, he's going to spray somebody with, with the hairspray. So, you kind of saw that playing out, coming up, but then they're all together and, they're having their reunion moment. Now you see the entire group together and, it's a pretty cool, a pretty cool little moment. But then the down note comes and here comes Billy, now in a position of authority, which is just great. And of course, the women are already lined up to swoon over him because of reasons. But interestingly, one of the people, and I didn't recognize her right away, but I thought it might be Karen. And as it turns out, it's Karen, which is really cool because they had their little moment when he was looking for his sister at the end of season 2. Obviously, there was an attraction between them. I like Karen. I think that she's a good character. I really wish they would have utilized her more in season 2. I'm really glad that she's back for season 3. She's a great actress too. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, so I'm not going to try. But I did see her on Mad Men, and I thought she was a very talented actress. And I was very glad to see her on this show. So cool. She's back, but she's going after this, this complete douchebag and potentially cheating on her husband, who I don't really get their dynamic. I would have liked to have seen some backstory on them like 10 years ago to see why they even got together, because he's really kind of a dork, and I just don't see how those two ended up together. But, when you look at a lot of couples, you could say that. So anyway, she goes out of her way to make sure that he sees her at the pool. All these women are playing this game to, oh, we don't care about you, pay attention to us kind of thing. So it's going to be interesting to see where this leads. But, I don't, right off the bat, he's picking on this kid. I think he called him lardass or something like that. And, that would not happen. He would not keep his job. Somebody would be complaining. There's other lifeguards in the area. There's management out there. There's other people tending to the pool. Somebody would have said something and he would not be allowed to keep his job, or he at least would have been severely reprimanded for those actions. So I get he's the bad boy and we have to show bad boy actions. But I mean, again, it's got to be realistic. And I don't see that going unpunished. But to be fair, maybe that has yet to come. I've only seen the first episode, so maybe that is dealt with in a future episode. I don't know. His life may be derailed, as we see later on anyway. So, but I had to point that out. For the moment, I have to call bullshit on that. So they do their things, and Karen's back, yay. And then we go to Joyce and Hopper, and Joyce seems to have been able to keep her job at the market after all the excessive time and the grocery bill that she ran up during season 1. But I really like that Joyce is back, and I really like her character. We finally get to see what she's like without all the stress and insanity in her life. Things seem to be going good in the town right now, and so she's obviously gotten some rest. She is, calm. Her eyes are clear. She's speaking without shaking. She's actually really cool, and that just goes to show what a great actress Winona Ryder really is, because of the way that she's had to portray this character for the first 2 seasons. And now she can just be a normal person for a while. How long, I don't know. But obviously, as I said, when I watched the season 3 trailer and did my review of that, there's the beginnings, I think, of a romance between her and Hopper, which I think has probably been brewing over the years. But, the circumstances that have brought them together and the insanity and all of that probably is escalating. But I think that this is going to be a slow build because we've got so many other relationships that are happening. But it's kind of cool to see them and see the beginning of that build. But I'm excited to see how things go for Joyce now that she's got a minute to breathe while her son isn't being tortured by a demon or in a void somewhere that she can't reach. So it's nice for her to just have a little bit of a calm time. So then we go to Nancy's new job and the condescending assholes that she works with. She's obviously low person on the totem pole. She's bringing the coffee, bringing the sandwiches for them in their meeting. And big mistake, she speaks in a meeting, which how dare you, have an idea that us men don't come up with. You bring the sandwiches and pour the coffee, honey. The ideas are ours. And even though her idea is fantastic, they just treat her like complete shit, as was very common in those days. Unfortunately, that happens a lot. So, they're setting up she's kind of, I don't know the right words here. She's kind of not a loner so much, but she'll take care of business alone if she has to. She's spunky, and kind of setting up for her to be spunky very specifically by treating and showing that, we don't care about your opinion, so don't give it to us. When call that comes later on, I think this really sets up what I believe her potential is after that, but we'll get to that later. But it's interesting because on episode 50, my guest Dev Ross and I were speaking about that sort of world when she became the first female staff writer for Disney, and how a lot of the men treated her. I love that she fought back, but this is also related to the show Good Girls Revolt. It was based on the novel of the same name, and how it was back then, where women did a lot of the grunt work and men took all the credit because, you're a woman. How could you have any thoughts? Just stupid mentality that we had in this country, and still goes on in here and a lot of other places in the world. But that's the way things were. And being that this show takes place in the 80s, it's being true to form of the times. So I can appreciate that. Let's see. Then we go back to Steve and his horrible efforts to impress girls while wearing a stupid uniform at the ice cream place. More relationship building between him and his non-emotional coworker, who seems to take enormous glee in the fact that he's failing, probably again because she wants him for herself. Then back to Joyce and Hopper, who Joyce is trying to help him deal with Eleven's budding hormones and Mike's constant making out sessions. I could see, especially after losing his own daughter, why he would feel a little more possessive of Elle, plus all the people that have tried to hunt her and her special powers and everything else. So, I get where he's coming from, but I think they're playing it a little bit over the top. He's okay with yelling at her at times, so I don't know why this would be any different, but trying to have a calmer conversation with her, as he's tried to do, hasn't always worked out for the best, and he sometimes ends up injured. So I could understand a certain amount of caution, but it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. Again, though, obvious separation now, because he used to be able to come home and have a conversation with Elle, and now that she's with Mike, he doesn't really feel as much a part of her life. So again, he's being separated from her, and there's more of that reoccurring theme that we've talked about. So I like that that's happening. I like that he's struggling, because it just further emphasizes the point of how many people are really going in different directions, as the effects of season 2, the power of everything that happened and how people usually band together. Eventually that peters off, which happens after a tragedy. People band together, they're supportive. And then as time goes on, people just go back into their lives. And it's not that those things didn't happen, but the reactions have changed and gone back to normal. So it's very, very, understanding that everybody would be kind of pairing off and going their separate ways as their interests change as they get older. And then, it's the next day or later that day, and the kids are in the field. They're going to put up the antenna. And of course, Mike and Elle want to break off and go make out some more because they have some time. And so they start separating from the group, more separation. And then the group continues on up the hill, and Will stops because he's sensing something. The rats are running by, and I don't know how none of those kids heard all that chittering from the rats. But now he's separating himself from the group. They're yelling at him to catch up. They're not going back for him, even after everything he's been through. They're just like, hey, just catch up to us. I'm sure nothing weird is happening with you, even though you're the one that the weirdest stuff happens to. So again, he separates himself a little bit from the group. Of course, eventually he does catch up, but he's sensing something, showing that he's still connected again to all of this stuff going on. And then let's see. So Billy and Karen then have their moment that just reinforces the some kind of affair thing is building between them. Whether that actually happens or not remains to be seen, but definitely something's budding. Then Dustin and group are putting up the antenna array. And I've got to say, I love the effort that the sound designers went to while they were putting this thing together. They have this really interesting little sort of almost motorized clicking sound. I'm going to call a foul on it though, because I don't think that there are motors in there that are keeping things together. I think it's probably just going to be some sort of locking mechanism at best. So I don't think the sound was really suited to it, but I definitely appreciate the effort. It was a cool sound. I just don't really think he went to all that trouble on the pole. That seems excessive to me. And he's a pretty smart kid. He's going to spend his time on the stuff that matters. I don't really see motorized pole sections being that important. But I could be wrong. I could be missing something. But so for me, that piece of sound design didn't work. But I do appreciate the effort. Definitely pretty cool. Then we're back to Joyce, who is getting all dressed up and perfecting her look and her feeling about herself to go meet Billy the asshole for her affair. And as she comes down the stairs and getting ready to sneak out of the house, she hears her husband snoring. And of course, she's got to go look. And there he is with his daughter laying on him, and they're both fast asleep. And so you're wondering now, is she having second thoughts? Is she feeling guilt? Is she still going to go? We don't know. And Billy, of course, we see driving down to wherever he's going to meet her. And he gets something hits his windshield, and he gets completely derailed, gets into a car accident, hits a tree. And I don't know anything about sports cars, especially back in the 80s. I don't know if they had push button starters back then, but it seems like he pressed a button and then got pissed off because the car didn't work. Definitely did not make a motion to turn keys. So I will just assume that it was a push button start car and that's all in continuity still. Gets out, really upset because it's in his character's tendency to just react with anger and emotion than it is to sit down and okay, the car's not starting, but the radio's playing, so it's not the battery. What's going on. He gets out. He's all pissed off about the car being damaged, which of course is his prized possession. So I don't know, a lot of different things going on with him. And then he hears something and he gets his leg grabbed and he's dragged through this. It looks kind of like a greenhouse. I'm not sure exactly what it is or where he is. He's just like out, again, separated from everything else. He's kind of out in the country somewhere. And next thing you know, he gets dragged down a flight of stairs. Now, I don't know what this place is, but it's obviously something interesting because not only does it have this, the yard that he can get dragged on the ground from, then into this sort of greenhouse or warehouse thing, but now we know it's subterranean because he's being dragged down a flight of stairs from the ground. And of course, he's screaming. But here's the part that, again, doesn't work. He's being dragged down a flight of stairs face first, and then they cut to a wide shot and you hear him screaming. There's no way he's still screaming because his face is going to be bouncing off the stairs. So again, great shot, great sound effect, great isolation, a little more reinforcement of that. But it just didn't work for me because you can't be screaming with your face being bouncing up and down stairs. And even if he would have held his head up so he could scream and someone could hear him, his chin would have still been hitting the stairs and his body is still bumping up and down stairs. So again, no way you're screaming like that. All the pressure is on your chest and your stomach. So you don't have the ability to take in a breath to scream like that. Writers, it just doesn't make sense. I'm not even going to blame the writers. I'll just say production, because that could have been the director. It could have been an idea of the cinematographer, whatever. But the end result is it just didn't work for me. So let's go back to Dustin. And now it's dark and he's still sitting there trying to reach his girlfriend. At least this time he's giving her a couple of seconds to respond before calling out to her again, as if she's just walking into the room eventually every 5 seconds. But then, of course, everybody's like, oh, she's probably not even real. Not buying that, because why would he go through all of that trouble to make up a girlfriend where he could have just said, hey, I think I can reach UFOs, or hey, I think I can reach this or that. Let's see what we can get. Why would he make up a girlfriend? That doesn't even make sense. So I don't get that line of thinking at all in saying that he made that up. That just seems really stupid to me. And, but of course, they all pack up and leave. And now he's isolated out in the woods by himself, or out on this hill by himself. And, he hears a voice, which is an obvious male voice speaking a foreign language. And he's still asking if it's Susie. It's not Susie. It's definitely not Susie. Unless Susie has a B. Arthur type voice, it's not her. And why would she be speaking in Russian? So again, like this stuff just doesn't make any sense. He would hear the voice and go, "Who is that?" I would think before he would answer. So again, just another thing that I'm not quite buying. But the episode is moving very nicely at this point. A lot of stuff has happened. A lot of stuff is unfolding. It's a great setup episode. So let's see. The next thing is they go back to the science place where the opening took place, and now the second in command scientist guy is the first in command scientist guy, and under the threat of death, he's now running his own second experiment. He walks into the room after the machine's already fired up. So who turned the keys this time, and under whose orders? Because it seems like he would have been one of the two people, or at least would have been in the room and nodded to them to turn the keys on. So again, not making a lot of sense. But so then you don't really know what happens from there. Obviously, they've got all new people because most of the people were killed in the first incident. Let's see. Then we go to the Karen thing, and then the Billy thing, and then now with regard to the isolation of Billy in this case, it's weird when we're thinking about the time frame of this stuff. At least it is to me, because my first instinct is, well, why didn't he just pull out his phone and call somebody, or whatever? Well, he doesn't have a phone because it's in the 80s and they didn't have cell phones. This is pre-internet, so. Keeping it in the context of it, it's really nice to see the having to make decisions and find ways to get around things instead of just having easy escape routes all the time with the technology that we have today. So it's kind of interesting to watch that all unfold. But I think that for us, watching it in the world that we live in today, makes it even a bigger feeling of isolation because he can't just call somebody. And of course, if this was a modern thing, then there would be no signal because that's what we do in TV and movies all the time. But for me, thinking about it, and like, well, I would just pick up my phone. Oh, yeah, you can't. Wow, what does he do? He's out in the middle of nowhere. It's night. Maybe nobody lives at this place where he's at right now. It could be abandoned. Who knows? He can't just knock on the door. And of course, he's taken away by the creature. But it really kind of adds to that feeling, doesn't it? Because we don't have the modern conveniences as we're watching this show that we would if this were happening in today's time. So I think that really adds to it quite a bit. And that's pretty much it. The episode ends, and as he's dragged down the flight of stairs, and then there's that far away shot with him screaming ridiculously while being dragged down a flight of stairs face first. But overall, I really like this. I think it was a great action-packed episode. I think that a lot of stuff happened, and a lot of stuff that's going to be setting up the other 7 episodes of this season. And I'm really excited to see where it goes. Despite some of the negatives, I really like this episode. And I think that I'm comfortable enough with the show to let some of the stuff go by and me still accept the things that are happening in the show, like the details of him, him getting face first down the staircase and still screaming. That kind of stuff, like I can let that go a little bit because we're 3rd season now. If it was 1st season, I probably would just say, yeah, I have a really hard time believing anything that goes on in this world because of all these other stupid things that take me away from it. And I've talked about this on the show before. When I go to the movie theater, which I don't very often, but when I do, one of the things that I really love is that I can get engrossed in the movie and not realize that I'm even a thing, that I'm just watching the movie and then something will happen and it'll break me out of it. And I'll realize like I'm a human being and I'm sitting in a movie theater and there's the edge of the screen. And I'm not just so into the story that I completely forget the world around me exists. And when I see things like that don't match in continuity, when I see things that don't make sense, when I see characters do things that they really wouldn't do, that are just so far out of character, or people respond in ways they wouldn't respond, I find it very difficult to buy everything else that happens. And so it's that edge of the screen moment for me where I come out of the movie and realize, oh, I'm in a theater, and they have to really work hard to get me back into that. I forget I'm in a theater mode and I just get so engrossed in the story again. It's really hard to do that. So when there's those little continuity things or little character flaw things or sounds that don't really work, that's just kind of the way that I get with it. I see the edge of the screen. So But sometimes, if you're into it enough, you can kind of let some of that stuff go. And I kind of feel like that's where I am right now with this because it's season 3. But hopefully, whatever I see going forward will be minimized, and I don't see things that take me out of the show. But we'll see how it goes. But in the meantime, thank you for listening to my review of episode 1 of season 3 of Stranger Things on Netflix. And I hope you liked it. And maybe you'll tune in for episode 2 as soon as I get that done. Talk to you soon. Bye.